Hey everyone, welcome back to OT Rex. I hope you guys are doing well. Today's video is about self-feeding skills in addition to basic oral motor development. So if you guys have seen some of my other videos, you might recognize some of these pictures from my self-feeding skills video. And initially when I was organizing my thoughts and brainstorming to make this basic oral motor development chart for you guys, I realized that the self-feeding would have been so easy to combine into this lesson. So this is going to be a nice overview for any of you who have already looked at the self-feeding video, but this chart combines oral motor development as well as some basic reflexes for you guys to get a good overview on both of these areas of development. Please keep in mind that depending on the source, the information may vary a little bit. So let's begin with 2 to 4 months. Not too much is going on at this time. A child is able to bring one or both hands up towards the bottle or the breast. And we also have an active rooting reflex. So rooting reflex is a latching or sucking response when you rub the child's cheek or lips, and basically they're looking for food. And so that reflex is present through 4 months. I drew a little picture of 2 hands reaching up for the breast or the bottle. At 4 to 6 months, a lot more is going on, as you can see. The phasic bite reflex is active at this time, and the phasic bite reflex is when a child will bite down when pressure is placed on their gums. So basically, if you put a finger in a baby's mouth during this window of time, they're going to bite down thinking it's food. And munching also begins during this window. So munching, I think of literally the motion you would do with your hand if you had a puppet on your hand. So it's just open, close, up and down. This is a rhythmic, rapid up and down movement. So no lateral movement yet. And teething also starts at 4 to 6 months. So I think these are easy to remember together because if you're teething, then you obviously have some movement down, just the up and down motion to want to get that chewing input in. And in addition to that, the gag reflex will start to slowly disappear starting from 6 months because we are now transitioning to getting stronger and better at eating. So from 6 to 12 months, that gag reflex will slowly disappear. Tongue thrust is also something really interesting that I wanted to include. If you're not familiar with that, it's when if you place a finger on the lips of a baby's mouth, you're going to see their tongue thrust forward out of their mouth. And it's basically supposed to help them with that sucking motion when they're on a bottle or breastfed. But they no longer need that reaction or reflex after they transition to eating more solid foods or as they develop stronger patterns of jaw and oral motor movement. So tongue thrust will go away at 4 to 6 months. As a side note, this is why it's so challenging for children who retain their tongue thrust when it comes to feeding therapy because everything is getting pushed out of their mouth because that reflex is still there and they're not able to properly coordinate their mouth or their tongue to help them make a bolus and swallow. So this starts to make more sense when you think about how it will tie into therapy and working with children who might have delays in feeding. At 7 to 8 months, we have diagonal jaw movement. So a really easy way to remember this is to think of the number 7. When you draw this number, you have to draw a diagonal line, which is really convenient for remembering that diagonal jaw movement occurs at 7 to 8 months. So that's a really easy one, and I'm really glad I thought of that. And a child also starts to eat mashed and soft foods at this point, like meltables and thick purees. At 6 to 9 months, a child is able to hold a cup with both hands, and they can actually sip some water out of an open cup with a little bit of help. I'm going to have a little bit of a clock obsession in this chart because I realized I used this example twice in 2 different ways. You'll see. I had a fun mnemonic device. I drew a cup being held by 2 hands, and I colored in a block of the cup that would be the 6 to 9 o'clock window if this cup was actually a clock. So this is a fun, easy visual for you to really drill into your brain that a child holds a cup with both hands at 6 to 9 months. And they also start to play with spoons. So you'll see banging as well as mouthing. And mouthing makes sense because lip closure, our ability to put our lips together and seal them, also kicks in at this age range. 9 to 13 months means that this child is getting near 1 year of age. And if you remember the pincer grasp development, where you're holding small objects between your thumb and your index finger, starts to develop at 9 months of age. And this is really appropriate for finger feeding if you're eating like meltable cereal and, soft and fast little melting foods. So finger feeding starts to develop because the pincer grasp kicks in at 9 months. Lateral tongue movement also develops during this window, and this is when this clock theme came back to me. It's funny because I drew these pictures over a year apart, and yet I used a very similar mnemonic device. I thought of a child sticking out their tongue to the side and lateralizing, and then I immediately thought of a clock. So if someone's face was a clock, then imagine the child lateralizing their tongue to the side, which is at 9 o'clock. So that's why I drew that picture. And hopefully it doesn't confuse you guys that I have two different clock-based visual mnemonics. And then I also drew a little hand with a pincer grasp, and I put the number 9 in it so it helps you remember that the pincer grasp develops at 9 months of age. 12 to 15 months, so we're over the 1 year hump, and at this point, kids are able to independently take small sips from a cup, and also they are dipping their spoon into food. But that doesn't mean that it's really clean, so they're aiming for their mouth, but it's still very messy. And also rotary chewing patterns kick in at this time from 10 to 12 months. I drew a picture of a child dipping their spoon, and I also changed the letter I in dip into a 1 because the dipping pretty much happens around this 1 year mark. At 15 to 18 months of age, kids are starting to use straws, and that usually kicks in around 1.5 years of age. They're scooping with spoons, which is great. Their fine motor skills are getting better. And this is a mnemonic device for you guys to help remember the age range when children learn how to use spoons and forks effectively. And this is actually a part of my original self-feeding skills video. I thought it would be nice to put this in here as well. So from 1 to 1.5 years of age, we learn how to use a spoon. And from 2 to 3 years of age, we learn how to use a fork. The mnemonic device I've heard for this one is that you spoon before you fork. I know that's a silly one, but we have to remember that the spoon is mastered first, and that because you have to poke with a fork, it's actually more difficult mechanically to master this skill, which is why it comes at 2 to 3 years of age. At 2 to 3 years of age, we also are comfortable chewing vegetables and most types of meat. We're able to use our tongue effectively to form a bolus, which is just like a round piece of food that we've chewed up and brought to the back of our throat. And that happens at 16 to 24 months. We are also able to independently drink from cups now and stab with the fork, which I shared with you earlier, and independent spoon use. So by 3 to 5 years, we're really just finessing our skills. We're independent eaters at this point, typically, and our jaws are stronger. We have all these different movements down, and eating just gets easier and more independent starting from this window. That's it for today's video. I hope you guys take care, and I will see you guys next time.